this is a pretty special day. And, I like to say, I feel like I learned more, my jiu-jitsu understanding comprehension, from day one black belt to today than I did from blue to black. Of course, white to blue, you go from nothing to something, so you learn exponentially more. But so much came after black belt in terms of like just my understanding, not just of technique, but of appreciation for the journey and most of what I would call the jiu-jitsu worth keeping. Those concepts from that beginning phase of black belt till today has come from the style that you guys got to be a part of today, Ibero style, and so much of that came directly from you, and not just the moves, because you can have technique, but without values and without a system of communication and leadership, that all crumbles. So this means a lot. I'm so happy we got to do that. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you. And I kind of think of the fifth degree as like, yeah, getting older for sure. But a big part of what it means is just that I just kept doing it and continued to learn. And it can be tough to have an open mind after so many years. You get older, you can get set in your ways. You can start thinking that maybe you're smarter than you really are, and you have to keep challenging your beliefs and see if there's a better way to improve. And then there's like an old cliche that is like the student becomes the teacher. And I learned so much from you guys, from my students. You're trying new things, you're watching videos, you're competing, you have struggles, you ask questions I don't know the answers to, but I try to figure it out. And so that brings me to Anthony, the idea of learning from a student. And I've learned a lot from him. He started when he was 5, so I didn't learn a lot from him when he was 5. But over the years, he just, as a kid, he came through the system, and a lot of kids, they train a while, some of them move on to other sports, and he was always here. And I don't mean just like here, like he was here like 6 days a week, and in the summertime, twice a day, and just training all the time. And as soon as he was old enough, he just made himself, he absorbed this lifestyle as much as possible. And so when I say learn from my students, I don't just mean like the techniques, I mean how you live your lives and the attitude and character that you bring to the mat with you every day. And so I noticed from him early on the commitment and discipline that it takes to be great. Because he's great. He's great at jiu-jitsu. Anybody rolls with him, it's like, yeah, he's great. I get it. Get off me. Too much pressure. Jiu-jitsu's great. His ethics are great. The way he commits to whatever goal he has is a model that we can all learn from, and that I'm still learning from. Not getting emotional. My wife says like I'm kind of like cold, but then I get in front of people and talk about jiu-jitsu in my heart. I gotta work on both. But I summarize, because of that, this is such an incredible privilege for me to have been on this journey with him from day one, 5 years old, all the way until now. Anthony Martinez. Woo!
Could have tied it a little better. So before I say anything, so many of you may not know, but I do have parents, and they're right over there. And I still remember the first day that I walked into the academy 17 years ago with my dad. It was my very first day, and my very first class, I had on a gi top, no belt, and cargo shorts. After the class, I knew right away that it's like, this is what I want to do. I fell in love with it, and I told my dad that, and he told me, and honestly, I don't remember this, but this is like one of his favorite stories to tell. He told me that if he were to put me into jiu-jitsu, then I better stick with it, right? Because he's paying good money for it. So I hope I stuck it out long enough for him to get his money's worth. My mom for the 13 years that I was here, drove me to and from training. And like he said, for a lot of those years, it was 2-3 times a day. So she's been here just as long as I have, just in the parking lot. So before I said anything, I just wanted to say thank you to them. All right, so I've given this speech a lot of times in my head because for a long time, it was the way that I reflected on the gratitude that I have for so many people and so many different things that have happened for me because of jiu-jitsu. 17 years worth of gratitude. Over that time, so many people have told me like just how lucky I am to have started when I was 5, and how they wish they would have started when they were younger. And obviously, I'm so lucky to have found something that I love from when I was so young. But there's a part of me that does envy those of you that have started when you're a little bit older, just because what I've missed out on having started so young is the contrast of life before jiu-jitsu and after jiu-jitsu. I don't remember anything from before I was 5. So every memory that I have is marked by jiu-jitsu, in a big way or a small way. So part of what I've had to do in the 17 years, and more so in the last 3-4, is define what it is that I value about jiu-jitsu. Right? That also means what it is that I value about myself. It's such a big part of who I am and my identity. A lot of people, when they give this speech, talk about how they never would have imagined that they would have made it to this point. When I walked in 17 years ago, I knew from that day that I would be up here. Now, if I knew it was going to take 17 years, maybe I wouldn't have second asked. I knew from the very first time that I watched Professor Travis train that I wanted to be a black belt. Because in my head, it's like, wow, a black belt, he moves so effortlessly. Back then, I said it was like he was floating. And that's what I wanted to be. And to be that, I had to be a black belt. So for a long time, I associated the value of jiu-jitsu to progressing through the belts. Right? So each step was just that much more exciting to get to the black belt. I remember getting my yellow belt. It was actually the same day that Robbie got his black belt. I don't remember Robbie getting his black belt, but I remember the guy Robbie got his black belt with. So his speech was great. Robbie's I don't remember. I remember getting my orange belt, and I think I was about 9 years old when I got my orange belt. Nowadays, you're not even eligible for an orange belt until you're 10. And that rule came out about that same time, or a little bit after the time that I got my orange belt. And they also said that you weren't eligible for a green belt until you were 13. So that meant from 9 years old to 13 years old, I wouldn't be eligible for another promotion. And having attached so much value to progressing through the belts, and like consequently my own value to that, it made that a really difficult time, right? Because now what it is that I value, not just about jiu-jitsu, but about myself, was stunted. I didn't have anything to work towards anymore. And I'm 9 years old, so not that I'm going through all of this in my head, but reflecting on it, I'm surprised I didn't quit. And I don't know that it's because of some unrelenting will that I had when I was 9 years old, but I do know that it's largely due in part to that guy right there. I remember meeting Professor Jose at some point in that 4 years, and it was a Friday no-gi class, and the reason I remember is because he was wearing a purple rash guard, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever, because I'd never seen one of those before. And he laughed because that was like one of his favorite rash guards, and I didn't learn that until later on. A few months after that, he would actually become one of the head kids coaches, and me being me, I showed up to the academy 30 minutes to an hour early, do whatever I could around the academy, because I just loved being there, and he was there too. In time, he started inviting me onto the mat, and we would just practice whatever it is that we were going to do that day. And that soon evolved into him showing me things that he was working on. This was jiu-jitsu that I'd never seen before, things to me that were really advanced. And I remember being just so excited about coming into the academy each class. So that feeling of, or that idea that I wasn't going to get promoted for another 4 years, and the burden that had on me kind of faded into the background. And what I started to value was the process by which we earn those belts, and the process of learning. Jose taught me to love learning. And I don't know why he did what he did, but and I wish at the time I would have had enough awareness to be able to express the gratitude that I have now for him and what he did for me. But we're here today, so I'd like. So then fast forward a few years later, I would finally get my green belt. We had like I had balloons, a cake. It was a whole thing. Then I would get my blue belt, and then purple. And I paused at purple because it was at this point that soon after I would end up leaving this place. And for any of you that have been around long enough, you know, people come and go all the time, and I never did. For the 13 years that I was here, I don't know that a week went by that I wasn't on the mats in some capacity, right? I mean, I think I had surgery at one point, but I was still teaching. So I really had to reflect on those 13 years, and what I realized is just how many people had invested in me. And for some context, something that I've struggled with for a really long time is this deep feeling of self-hatred. And so like any success would be watered down because it was what I was supposed to do, right? Whether that be jiu-jitsu, school, whatever it was. Any failure really just highlighted that feeling of worthlessness. So that said, I couldn't reconcile the fact that so many people had done so much for me when in my eyes I was so undeserving of all of that. Why would anyone pay for something that has no value, right? And most confusing of all, I kept from saying his name because I think after I say his name, it's gonna make it that much more difficult to talk. But Professor Travis, when I wasn't with my parents, really did raise me. I remember when it sort of all started. Obviously, I was 5 when I started training, but when I was 11, Professor Travis had given me a book. The name of the book was No Excuses by Brian Tracy. A boring-ass book to give a kid. But I read it anyway. And I don't know that a day went by after that I wasn't around him. And for a lot of those days, 12 hours. We would train, or really we would work out, we would train, we would work, we would teach, and then we would train again. Like from 9 to 9. And I couldn't understand why the person that I look up to most in the world would invest any time or effort into me. I couldn't understand it, and it really ate at me. And this is a bit of time before I would end up leaving. So one day I just asked him, why did you choose me? Of all of the kids that came before me, of all of the kids that were 100 times more talented than I could ever hope to be, of the kids that in my eyes were actually deserving of that time and effort, why did you choose me? And he said, because you showed up. So all of that self-loathing, what I couldn't downplay of myself, what I couldn't malign of myself was that no matter what, I would always show up. I'm up here today because I showed up. I showed up for 17 years. And the plan at Black Belt is to continue to show up, right? And I can give myself credit for that. Obviously, I have so much gratitude for so many people that have invested into this moment. And it's crazy because I'm looking at all of these people that are standing here and I'm like, these guys have watched me grow up. It's pretty crazy. But something that I've come to realize is just as important as the gratitude that we have for others is being able to have that gratitude for ourselves. It's taken me a long time to get to that point, to see value in myself. But I know for all of us, it's so easy to find value in other people. And it's easier said than done to find value in ourselves, but it can be done. And I guess if you take anything away from it, it's show up and appreciate yourself for showing up. So I want to say thank you to everyone, and thank you to my parents, and thank you.
All right. Group picture? Right over here. 1, 2.